Hi, I'm Lisa from Lori's Country Cottage. Welcome to How Tuesdays. Today I'm going to show you how to put binding on non-traditional corners. Normally our quilts have 90-degree angles, but sometimes we work with hexagons and octagons and other shapes. And binding works a little bit different, and I'm going to show you how. Okay, let's talk putting binding on angles that are not our normal 90-degree square corner. So here I have an octagon table topper and I'm going to put binding on, but I can't use the exact same method that I use for binding square corners. When we bind square corners, we stitch our binding on, stopping the distance away from the end of our quilt that is equal to our seam allowance, and then we know that we have a perfect mitered corner on our binding. But it doesn't work the same with this. So let's go to my sewing machine and I'll show you how we do it. All right, I've started stitching my binding on already. This is a 2 1/4 inch binding, so I am using just slightly larger than a 1/4 inch seam allowance. So normally if this was a 90-degree angle, we would stitch to a 1/4 inch and stop. But this is a little bit different. So you can see that I have pins in all of my angles, and that's the trick. No matter what angle this is, you need to find the middle of the angle and pin it. Lucky for me, it lines up with a seam line, and so I'm able to line my pin up. So I have my pin here in the middle all ready to go, and I'll show you how this works. So I'm just going to stitch till I get a little bit closer. There we go. And now, keeping that pin in a straight line, I want to catch my fabric There we go. So it's a straight line here and here. And now I'm going to stitch up to that line, wherever that lands on that line. There we go. Now I'm going to pivot my quilt or my table topper as it turns and just drive off. Doesn't matter which direction you just drive off, just drive off. All right, now I need to fold this corner just like regular binding. So what we're going to do is put the pin in the fabric. Now I like to pin it this way so that the head isn't in the way. Again, on that straight line, take my binding strip and flip it up just like we would do with a 90-degree, and this point needs to stay here. And then I'm going to fold this back till my point is there and my edge lines up here. Now I'm going to take that pin and pin that down, and then I'll start right at the fold stitching a 1/4 inch seam allowance. And I'll stitch one more and show you that once again. All right, I've got my pin in at the correct angle. Now I want to catch my fabric, leaving my pin at that angle. I'm going to stop whenever my needle gets to that line, right there, and I'm going to stitch off. Now I'm going to transfer my pin so that it's sticking in my fabric along that line. So I look underneath to see where my point is, And now my pin has come right to my point. I'm going to flip my fabric up, bring it back down, and fold it down until this fold meets the point and this lines up along the side. And then just because it's a funny angle, I do like to throw that pin in there. And then start stitching right on the fold with the seam allowance that I'm using. So I'll just stop here and let's take a look at that corner that I've stitched. Here's the corner that I've stitched. Now when I flip it to the back, I have that beautiful 45-degree angle on my binding. And as I said, this trick works for any irregular corners that you have for binding. Thanks for joining me for How Tuesday. I hope you enjoyed learning how to put binding on non-traditional corners. And I hope you'll try a new project like our simple seasonal table topper.